All right, good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for joining the workshop. And today is the last day of the 3-day workshop on high-performance computing in materials and mechanics. And the response from the audience has been overwhelming over the last 3 days, actually, including the Phoenix workshop that we have organized on day 0. And I thank all the participants for their interest and enthusiasm. And today we have 4 speakers. And Professor Parag Ravindran from IIT Madras will chair the session. And Professor Parag Ravindran is a faculty member in the Department of Mechanical Engineering at IIT Madras. And he received his PhD from Texas A&M University. And he works in the area of soft materials and polymer mechanics, constitutive modeling of polymers and biomaterials. And with that short introduction, I request Professor Parag Ravindran to chair the session and take the session forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ratna. Thank you for the introduction. So welcome all to this session. It's a pleasure to introduce our first speaker for the day, Dr. Raghuram Desu. He is a faculty member at NIT Trichy. He received his PhD from IIT Madras and his BTech from BITS Pilani. The title of his talk is Thermal Analysis of Large Granular Assemblies Using Hierarchical Coupling of FEM, ANN, and DEM. Over to you, Professor Raghuram.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the introduction. And before starting, I would like to thank all the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my work. So I hope all the people were able to see the screen, shared screen. So today I'll be talking about a little bit about thermal analysis of large granular assemblies using hierarchical coupling, using, as everybody knows, FEM is finite element and ANN stands for neural networks, and discrete element modeling. So today's talk, this was done as a collaboration with Ratnakumar sir and other 2 authors, Akhil and Pramod. So with all 4 of us collaborating, we have worked on this problem. So we'll try to see how this methodology has been come up and why we need to look for such hierarchical coupling. So the talk will be mostly based on giving an introduction to these methods, what is ANN or DEM, and how we were able to come up with a combination of all these things to solve a problem which is slightly difficult when we take any one of the methods. So coming into the flow of the system or the contents, we'll try to see what do you mean by a granular system initially, like what are the characteristics of granular system, some examples, and how do we model such systems? What are the different methods we have, and what are the advantages of each method and disadvantages? And then we'll go into a numerical method or a numerical model that's been used for designing these granular methods, that is called the discrete element modeling. So we'll look into a little bit about discrete element modeling because it's a new area. It's an emerging area because of the from past decade it has been emerging due to the high computational powers, because that also we'll see why we need a high computation power for such methods to evolve. So once we know about that, we'll try to see how this discrete element model helps us to find out effective thermal conductivity if you have a pebble assembly or a static pebble system. How do you calculate the thermal conductivity apart from experimental, but how do you simulate such systems, which might be easier when you consider it as a continuous system, because that all FEM analysis and all are there. But suppose instead of a continuous medium, if you have a discrete medium like granular system, how do we go about? What are the different methods we have? And in that, we'll try to see one of methods, that is resistor network model. How do we able to calculate the thermal conductivity using that method? So we'll also see how that method, the basics of that method, and how to develop such method. Once we have this, we'll try to see how we can include DEM understanding and this thermal analysis to understand a large scale granular system. Like if we have a huge granular system like silos or anything, how do we calculate properties for that system or the effective thermal conductivity? In the present case, we'll be looking at the one property, that is the effective thermal conductivity. How can we deal with such problem? First of all, what are the problems or what are the limitations to deal with such problems and how to overcome them? So while trying to overcome them, we need to have some predictive model or a machine learning technique. So for that, we'll be using artificial neural network. So that will be the overall contents of the presentation. So coming back to the first topic, that is, what do you mean by a granular material? So if you take the simple definition, if you just type granular, you'll get the first searches in Wikipedia, you'll get simple definition like a granular material is a conglomeration of discrete solid macroscopic particles characterized by loss of energy whenever the particles interact. So if you want to break down the simple understanding of this sentence, it's basically a collection of numerous discrete solid particles. For example, your soil or your pebbles, whatever the pebbles you are, marbles or pebbles, or some metallic ball bearings and all. So for example, if you see here, we can see the ball bearings or the mining industry also, because you need to mine, those are all of discrete particles. It's not a continuous. Or the soil powders, the pharmaceutical powders, or the simple powder technologies what we use, or the coal or the grains, everything comes under granular systems. So what is special about this granular material? So for that, I have shown you two figures here. So one is, we can see that it can act both as a flow, that means it has both a solid properties. That is, in the first case, if you see, if you try to compact a granular system, it almost acts like a solid. It gives a resistance force and it will not deform, and it will not show as the properties like liquid also, because it has its own distinct property. Same way, if you see, if you try to pour them, it will flow. That is a little bit about liquid or the flowability of the granular system. So you can see that it has it's not totally a solid, it's not totally a liquid. So one may ask why it is not totally a liquid. So suppose if we have a liquid in the place of the first system, whenever we apply any force on the system, the hydrostatic force, it is uniformly distributed. But however, if you take this granular system, it will not distribute. It will have its own distinct anisotropy involved into the same way. So in that sense, I cannot clearly say that it's a liquid, or I cannot say that it's totally a solid. It's a combination of both the properties depending upon your external force application or the external reactions or the forces you apply on the system. They act differently. And also, if you see a simple thing which most of you have learned in our mechanical engineering, like impact between two particles, like head-on collision and all. So those basically, there we consider them also as a discrete material, and we'll try to solve. So how to model such materials? So if you want to numerically solve or numerically, like what happens to the system if I apply some heat or some force, some shear force, how do you model them? One way is to understand the thing is by understanding the experimental results, or you do the experiment and you get the results. However, if you want to get inside the details, like if you want to exactly know what is happening within the system, it's always a method we look for is a numerical method or an analytical method where we can get more insights. Except for an experiment, we'll only get a macroscopic response. However, if you want to know what are the factors that are involved, how to model them, how to predict the properties, you need to do numerical analysis or some way of other way where you can understand what is really happening inside the system. So let's see what are the different modeling approaches generally people follow when you have a granular system. So there are two approaches. One is continuum approach. The another one is a discrete approach. So continuum approach, which most of us know, that is basically a finite element method in which you have some constitutive laws saying the stress and relationships or a plastic flow behavior, stress flows and all. But what is the problem with this is that we are considering the whole system as a continuous and completely filled. That means we are not considering individual particle behavior. We are seeing what is the overall behavior of the system. So if I just close all the particles inside and if I put some force, what is my macroscopic response? I will not see what is happening inside the system. So that is what we call it as a continuum approach, where we don't look into the particle behavior. However, in the discrete model, we see of more like we try to understand each particle as a distinct entity. We'll see how it is moving, how it is interacting with other particles and all. That means it's not generalizing or homogenizing the whole system, but it is looking at each particle. So at that point, what happens is we can understand the particle level interactions, and also we can understand how the particle behavior is happening within the system. So such system response can be understood from the particle interaction. for suppose a simple example, I'll say why we can't go for some cases in continuum approaches. Like if your particle shape is changing from one system to another, suppose your particle is not, aspect ratio is changing. The same thing you cannot see it in the continuum approach, but the same thing you can understand what happens if my particle is elongated, how it is affecting my overall response. That can be understood using a discrete approach. However, when you consider a continuum approach, that particle behavior or the particle properties are neglected. So that is the difference between these two things. And one may ask why then when discrete approach is available, why? What we'll look into the present presentation, why there is a need for that we cannot use discrete approach for all the systems. So coming to the discrete element modeling, so it is basically developed by Kundal and Stark in 1970. It's basically based on the molecular dynamics simulation. So based on the molecular dynamics principles, they have brought out the way in which we can have a framework for calculating the granular system. So what does a DEM, when you say discrete element method, or when you say simulation that I am doing, what are the main aspects of such system? First thing is, it should do two functions. First one is, it should calculate finite particle displacements and rotations. Second thing is automatically perform contact detection for an assembly of particles. I'll try to explain these two in the coming slide. What do you mean by each sentence? Then one may ask why we need to do this DEM analysis. So as I explained in the previous slide, that it will help us to understand what happens if you have different shapes of the particles or the particles are cohesive. So it's basically we'll try to understand how the macroscopic response of the system is being characterized or governed by the particle-particle interaction. So and also it reduces the number of physical experiments, because here we are trying to exactly take the system as it is as a granular system. We are not homogenizing the whole system or a continuum level. It is easier to get some of the things to be done initially using the DEM, so that it can act as a virtual experimentation. So coming to how do you understand a DEM? Like what does a DEM exactly do? So that we can understand in a very simple way. So most of you have played caroms. So the understanding what goes in our mind when you are playing a caroms or a snooker game is what the DEM does. So when you are playing a carom board or anything, what you do, you try to see at what angle I have to hit so that the other particle will move. So it's basically you are trying to monitor each and every particle's position and its velocity, how much velocity I have to give, at what angle I have to beat, so that it will move. So if you see here, you are just using a simple principle of F is equal to ma. That means if I apply this much force, this will accelerate this much. And if it hits something, it will try to move in that direction. So the whole DEM is based on simple principle of F is equal to ma, similar to our caroms. Even though we are using it, the same concept has been developed into a numerical method. If you see in the first thing, the yellow one, it's the red color and the white color. So it's trying to trace the path and see how many particles it is meeting. And once it meets, you are trying to solve some equation there. What is that equation? Your impact equation you are solving. So if it comes and hits at some angle, what happens to that particle? That is what is the same also does the same numerical analysis. Like it will try to see what are the particles that are contacting and how much is the force that is being exerted. If you see the same thing in the snookers, if the advanced snookers, if you see here, there is a artificial intelligence or a program that is trying to predict what will be the motion of the striker once you strike the white ball. So that is also based on the same DEM analysis. So it's one way it's trying to see how the particle moves and it's trying to predict it. So DEM helps in understanding the motion of each particle. It will try to monitor the particle's motion, and it will see whether it is contacting some other particle. If it is contacting, then what are the extra forces coming onto it? So how to change the velocity, what will be the direction of the velocity? So in that sense, the whole DEM can be taken into two parts. As I said, the two steps we have, that is the contact detection, and another one is the movement of the particle. So the first step in DEM, or the key steps that are involved in the first, you define what are the positions of your particles. Once you have those positions, you know what are the particles that are contacting. So when the particles contact, there might be some forces generated because of initial velocity they have, or due to some cohesive forces, some gravity forces and all. So once you have those contacts, you will try to see what are the force forces that are coming into picture. So that is what we call it as a governing equation for the particle-particle interaction. So it is similar to your FEM. If you are talking, you know your Young's modulus. If you apply some force, you will know what will be the difference. Same way here, we'll have some laws which will define how should two particles interact. So that are called as the interacting laws or the contact laws between the particles. What does they? How much is the force generated when two particles interact? So once you know the force, what you do is you calculate the effective force on that, and you will try to accelerate, and then you try to find out the velocity. Then you again get your new positions. So once you get your new positions, again the whole cycle will be continued. So you can see that here only the two main principles are there. That is Newton's laws that are happening on the acceleration velocity position on the top side, and the bottom side you have contact mechanics. That is basically how these forces are generated. So these are the two keys. I said one is finite motion. The DM should be able to do a finite motion. That means it should be able to predict the motion of the particles. Second thing is it has to know which particles are coming in contact with what particle. That is what we call as a contact detection. So in general, these forces can be rotational forces. That is the simple formulation. Instead of F is equal to ma, you can even use I d omega by dt is equal to m. Or you also have these forces ma, that is m into dv by dt is equal to, you have different types of forces. Here I am showing you gravitational force, contact force, and non-contacting force. Suppose you have some allostatic force, or which is not contacting, but you have a field force. So you will try to add those all onto the particle and try to move it according to the resultant velocity. So this is the overall understanding of how DM works. So now you know how the DM works. So now thing is, how do we calculate the effective thermal conductivity of a granular system? So here I'm giving just an example. What do you mean by a granular system? So I have a system that is made up of different spherical particles here. So now I want to know if I send some Q naught, Q dot, or some boundary conditions, if I'm applying at the bottom on the top, how will be my temperature distribution, or what is my effective thermal conductivity of the whole system? So that is the overall problem. How do we understand such systems? So one way to thing is we'll try to use the thermal DEM. So DEM gives the positions. So I'll explain why we need to go for a thermal DEM. So effective thermal conductivity of a pebble bed is generally a vital in designing any granular subsystems, because if you are talking about any granular system that involves heat exchange or expansion and thing, it's very important to know what is the effective thermal conductivity. But what are the features, or what are the properties this effective thermal conductivity is being affected? So if you see, there are two things. One is bulk conductivity of the pebbles and the stagnant gas. So you're talking about the bulk properties. So if my pebbles are made with steel, so that will affect my effective thermal conductivity, because if all my particles are made with glass, it will have different thermal conductivity. That can be easily understood. So that is the first one. Second one is it also is influenced by how closely are the particles packed. How much is the material available? That is nothing but the packing fraction we have inside the system. And how are these particles connecting to each other? Because if you see, the connection is what through which the heat transfer happens. So if you change the connection of the particles, the effective thermal conductivity change, or the pathway in which the heat has to transfer will change. And that is basically the coordination number is dependent upon how the particles have been arranged inside the system. So here you can see that I can have about how the particles are arranged in the system. Also, what are the properties of the particles? So that is the reason I cannot go for any other method other than DEM, because DEM is the one which gives me pebble configuration, exactly how the pebbles interact, what is their packing fraction, how is their coordination number is coming into picture. So this all affects my effective thermal conductivity. So for that, we'll try to see one simple case. How do we proceed, or how these methods work when you try to find out the thermal DEM? So in the present case, we are taking a granular system, which is in a stagnant position. So it's not moving, it's a static granular system. We have a stagnant gas. That means it's not in a vacuum, but we have some gas around the particles. That means the voids that have been created by the particles is filled by the gas. So one case we are considering is conduction is happening through both the pebbles and gas. We are not worried about convection because we said it's stagnant and the flow is very low, and radiation also will be very low. We are not considering those two cases. So what are the existing models for such estimation? So we have either resistance network model, a numerical approach, or you can go by an analytical method. So you need to calculate semi-analytical method. That means you have some information about packing coordination number from the DM, and you try to estimate what would be the overall effective thermal conductivity. But in the present thing, we'll try to see how do we model using resistant network model. So resistant network model, if you take a simple system, so I'm just taking a pebble assembly or a particle assembly. How this particle assembly, what is really happening when we apply a heat or a heat source or a temperature boundary condition? So the heat will be passing from one particle to another particle in two ways. That is basically when the particles are contacting. So if you can see that conduction is happening through the particles, here you have a conduction through the solid and a slight conduction through the gas that is overlapping this system. So that is what we call it as a system where you have a contacting particle where the heat is being transferred because of the contact between two particles. Same way, even though there might not be any contact, but they are very close to each, which will give you a resistance or a conduction through the gas. So there are two cases. So here you can see that here one case is that they're touching each other where the heat transfer can happen through the solid and also through the gas. When they're almost near, very close to each other, we'll try to see that there is no direct conduction, but conduction is happening through the gas. So in order to understand this, so we can say that we have an equivalent conductance between two particles, that is basically solid conductance, the contact conductance, that is basically because of the contact between these two, and you have the second solid conductance. So once the main aim is to find out this conductance. So once you find out this conductance, you can convert the whole system into a series of equivalent resistant network. So whole conductance 1 by C we can see, and we can say that we have all the resistors that are being connected to the centers of the particles. So that will create you something similar to your electric circuit. So electric circuit and the thermal circuits are similar. So once you have this network, if you apply a potential difference, so in this case, if you apply a thermal difference on the top and the bottom or in whichever direction we want, these numerically to get what will be the overall temperature difference once you get the effective resistance of all these resistors. So that is what we call it as, why the name came because of this. So we are trying to convert the whole granular system into a way where we can understand the connectivity. So here the resistance connectivity is very important, which is being given by the DEM. So once you have the connectivity, then you will try to find out what is the equivalent resistance network. Once you have that, so these are some of the equations that will be used. How do you calculate that resistance between two particles? Suppose we have two particles. So there are many people have come up with many models. So here we are using Batchelors and O'Brien. So based on that, you can calculate your contact conductance or conductance between two systems which are in a series with this formulation. And it will also show how if your system is affecting if you have a gas pressure is changing. So it is showing you how is the HR by ratio, that is basically the distance between two particles and the radius of the particle. And what will be the contact conductance. So this is normally a model which you can use, and this can change as per the model you take. So depending upon the material you use, the model can vary. So once you know the contact conductance, you will replace all of them and try to send the try to create the network and try to calculate your thing. So how do we do that? Once you have the network, you just apply boundary conditions in whichever direction you want, and you can easily calculate K effective is equal to Q dot H by A. Q dot we can calculate numerically, that is basically our current flow or the heat flow to the resistor network, and your area and your system height, you know how much you have taken. So from that you will be able to get your K effective. So if you want to summarize the whole thing, how we have been able to calculate the overall effective thermal conductivity. So these are the factors that are coming into picture. That is basically you have the parameters that affect the effective thermal conductivity. So you have some things which affect the structure. So that I call them as DM properties, and the other way which are the thermal properties. So thermal properties like thermal conductivity of the bulk, solid, gas, or molecular weight, and so on will affect how the contact conductance will happen. Once you have these two informations, then you will try to create a DM structure. Then you try to convert this DM structure into a resistant network. That is basically a resistant network is created. Once you have a resistant network, you will try to calculate using your any of the numerical methods you can use to solve your linear equations, algebraic equation, because all the equivalent resistance you need to calculate. Once you calculate, you will get the effective thermal conductivity. So the main problem with this method is the limitations. As I say the DM is only used for a small scale simulation. That means we can only use for a representative volume element. Higher the number of particles, it becomes computationally very intensive and time consuming. So it's practically not feasible to do a large scale simulations. So if you see for example, if I have to do a 5,000 particles, which will be a very, very small RVE, it will take around 10 to 12 hours on a single processor. So it's very difficult to do the DEM, then to do the resistor network model, and then to calculate the effective resistor. So if you want to do it for a very high system, what can we do? So the solution is we can do element-wise homogenization. Instead of homogenizing the whole system, we can take each element. We can divide the whole system into a smaller elements, and then each element properties are determined by the DM and the RM. That means basically I'm discretizing the whole system. Once you discretize the whole system, then each element, so the properties of each element are governed by the DM and RM. That means I'm trying to calculate the properties of each element based on the DM simulations and RN network. So as I see one question that DM parameters are same. So DM parameters will not be same because the input parameters will be varied as per the elemental properties. So the properties of each element be varied according to it. So the temperature can vary, the packing fraction may vary, the stress state can vary, and the gas pressure may vary. So if these are all varying, then I have to again input those values into my DM and RN to get the effective thermal conductivity. That is the reason I have to do for each and every element so that I'll get my effective thermal properties or the effective thermal conductivity. So if you want to see what is the overall flow, so if you see this is a system, so you discretize the system. Then the first step, you assume some temperature variation because all other properties are dependent on temperature, and we are trying to find out the temperature. So in order to do that, we'll use the guess and the predictor and the corrector method. So that is basically iterative process. So once you know a temperature, you will try to calculate what would be the effective thermal conductivity of each system using DEM and RN network. Once you have that, you again use the FEM solver to solve what will be the overall temperature. And if the temperature is converging, it's good. If it is not converging, then you again go to the first step and try to update the temperatures, and you update the properties of the system. Once you update those, again you have to do. But the main bottleneck here is DM computationals are intensive. So if you see each simulation, each block is taking, I said, 10 to 12 hours. And how many iterations I have to do and how many elements will be there, it's impossible. And it's almost all equivalent to doing the whole DM simulation. If I take the whole system as a granular system, it is similar to doing what? So how to remove this bottleneck? So in order to remove that bottleneck, I need to transfer my DM information in a very fast way, or in a faster, or it should be able to predict in a more less time consuming. So what I want to do is, if you go back to the way we have used our thermal DEM, we are doing, and the whole process is taking around 10 to 12 hours. So thing is, can I overcome this 10 to 12 hours into some fraction of seconds? Is there any possibility that I can bypass this step and get the things, but at the same time, I should not lose my DEM understanding. That means it should have the DEM information in it. At the same time, it should be faster. So the one way to overcome that is, the way we have overcome that process is by using a predictive model. So we use a predictive or a machine learning process with these inputs, because these are the inputs that are affecting my effective thermal conductivity. So if I use those inputs, if I give to the predictive model, whether it will be able to give my effective thermal conductivity. So there comes the overall thing is the artificial network. So for that predictive model, we used artificial neural network. So what we have done is that artificial neural network, as many of you know, it's a machine learning process, and it tries to recognize complex relationships. So if it is nonlinear relationships or any other, it will try to relate, and it will try to give the faster analysis with faster predictions without having our own understanding, like how each parameter is varying. Suppose one may ask, the same thing I can do it in an analytical way. Yes, you can do, but the relations will be too complex. It is very difficult to find some pattern. So instead of that, if you give it to ANN, it will try to understand. So there are two types of ANN, that is supervised and unsupervised learning. So that is basically clustering or the regression way. But for us, we want to do a supervised learning, that I'll say why we are going. So it's basically inspired by biological network, and its basic units are neuron and all. So for coming to our system, why for effective thermal conductivity, I used a supervised learning and regression. So what do you mean by supervised learning? So the predictions are based on already existing results. That means you give some inputs and some outputs. You say for these inputs, these are my corresponding outputs, and you give it to the system, and you'll say, okay, ANN, you learn. So these are the inputs, these are the outputs. What is the relationship? I don't know. You find out the relationship. So that is what we call it as a supervised learning. That means you are giving what are the inputs and what are the outputs, and you are trying to make the system understand, okay, for this input, I should get this output. So it will try to understand what is the relation between different inputs and different outputs. So that is what we call it as supervised learning. So that is what we use predictive model with ANN reduces the dependency on the simulation. So I no need to do my DEM simulation for every system. So once I train it, that I can use it as a joining for my FEM to DEM. So let's see how the ANN works. So this is the overall ANN process. So I'm just explaining in a simple way. So you have your, first of all, the first step is you need to have a sample data, because I said that we are trying to use a supervised learning. For supervised learning, we need to have what we call already the relation, the inputs and output. What should be the input and what should be the output. For if you see any other things, generally the first step is being done by the experiment. But instead of doing experiments, I'm using the DEM as my input. So I create the DEM, I do all the simulations, different conditions, different things, use my RN model and get my K effective. So I vary my input. I do basically a parametric analysis on the DEM and try to give all those data as a sample data to my ANN. So once the ANN is created, so the ANN consists of input, hidden layers and output layers. Once you define those things, once you give the sample data, it will try to learn. So it will train the network. Once the network is trained, then you have a trained neural network. So what does the trained neural network in the present scenario? These are my inputs. So I am giving all these as my inputs to my ANN. So inputs are 11 neurons. That means that I have 11 inputs. And this is my architecture of my ANN. That means I am having 3 hidden layers with 10, 10, 1 as a neuron. These are the system properties which can vary so that we can improve the accuracy of the system. So once I give this 11 neurons, I'll get my output neuron 1. That is basically my effective thermal conductivity. So once you have this, once I have to test, first of all, whether my ANN is able to predict properly. So if I see my training data is regression value is around 0.49, so it's very good. And also the prediction data for few inputs, like these inputs, it has not seen during the training period. So even then it is able to give a very good estimate of my effective thermal conductivity with a mean square error of power 10 power minus 6. So if you see that, and I also am trying to compare how my RN model, ANN and experiments are valued. So I'm not giving the background of what type of experiments, but for the experiments which we have done, we are trying to compare whether ANN is able to predict accurately. So we can see that experiment and RN model is what we have developed, numerical model, and the ANN model, we can see slight difference is there, but it's acceptable. It is within the tolerances. So once you are confident that ANN is able to predict your model properly, then you can go to the next step. That is basically the whole thing. Instead of doing the DEM and spatial configuration, I'm able to take the inputs into ANN. I'm able to get my effective thermal conductivity. So once with this, so I'm coming back to the flowchart, which we have seen before, like how we were able to do. Yeah, I'll be finishing in 2 minutes. Thank you, Parag, sir. So once we see here, the main bottleneck we have seen that we have DEM here, which will take, for each element, it will take 6 to 10 hours. So that is the real bottleneck when we are trying to combine. But however, if you see here, the ANN, the estimation of effective thermal conductivity of element through trained ANN. So ANN will take, so if you see the input of this, it's the gas pressure and the viscosity it is taking into account. It's taking the thermal conductivity of the gas and the thermal conductivity of solid, and these are all based on the temperature we assume. So once you have that, then ANN will be able to give you in a fraction of seconds what should be the effective thermal conductivity of each element. So once you know the effective thermal conductivity of each element, it is similar to your FEM problem. So only thing here is we are trying to run a continuum analysis, but in continuum, we are trying to bring the information that is coming from the particles data, that is the DEM. Whatever the information we have from the DEM, the properties from the DEM, we are trying to bring it into the sense when we are trying to use it in a FEM. So once you do that, you will be able to get the variation of the properties of the system depending upon the configuration or the stress state, the temperature, and the conditions of the system. So in that sense, we'll be able to do the whole simulation in a fraction of seconds because of the ANN. Instead of that, if you try to do DM for each element, it will take 10 to 12 hours for each iteration. So in that way, when you try to do, it's not always, should not look for the improving the computational power, but also we need to look for some hybrid technologies where we can reduce the overall computational power, but get the same result. So with this, we have done simple analysis. So with a uniform pressure and a pressure drop, so we were able to get the overall system, how the pressure drops or the heat transfer is happening within the system. The temperature distributions were able to be predicted. However, the same system, if you take it as a continuum system, we will not be able to get any of this variation because we consider everything to be homogeneous. But here the properties are changing as per the temperature. So it's inbuilt into that. So with this, I'll stop the presentation. If you have any questions, you can take.
Thank you, Professor Raghuram, for that very interesting talk. I think the floor is now open for questions. Gentlemen, if you have, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, please raise your hand. Or you can type it into the chat box also.
Parag, there is one question from Adarsh Shah. Which software is used to do DEM simulations?
Yeah, DEM software, there are some commercial softwares and also the open source software. So I have used an open source software called Light. It's spelled as LIGGHTS. It's an open source software. You can look into it. Any other question?
Yeah, Kodanda, you can unmute yourself and then ask. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't find where to raise the hand. Right. Okay. So I was wondering like whether you are using a mono-sized particles here or
we are using mono-sized as of now, sir.
Okay. Okay. So if you have
yeah.
Right. So in that RN model, you need to give some resistance to your each of those resistors, right?
Yes.
So if you have a distribution, particle distribution, so how would you, I mean, calibration part, how would you think you can do the calibration?
So if you go back to the calculations which we used for the contactor, it also includes the radius in it. It's not only the particle, yeah, this one. If you have the radius also into the formulation. Here, as you said, one scaling factor will be there, KS or all, that we may have to get from the experimentation. That is like a material constant or all. But if it is same material and same thing, if you are using, if there is a change of radius also, it's not a problem because the formulation will be able to take care.
Okay, so it doesn't depend upon the contact area between two particles.
It depends. It takes all those things into consideration. When it's trying to calculate the contact resistance between two particles, it requires the contact area, it requires the radius of the particles, the bulk properties, the thermal properties at each contact. So if the RN model tries to calculate the particle interaction, like the contact conduction for each contact. So when it's trying to do it for each contact, it will take automatically what is the relate to for radius of all those two things.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I have
Professor
one more
Raghuram, there are a few more things in the chat. People have
asked.
Yeah,
I'm seeing, sir. Yes. So from others, I got as a beginner how to start with ANN. Kindly suggest some books. So ANN is pretty information is a lot, but if you want to start using ANN, then you can use the toolbox available in MATLAB. It has a good number of example problems in that with a good theory, the starting theory. I will not say very deep into the thing, but it will help you to understand or start with a simple problem. Okay. So second question is from Mr. Babu. So he's asked, DM need validation of results. Yes, the DM, I didn't go into that but when you are trying to run a DM simulation, it's little bit similar to your material calibration. So you have one or two calibrational properties you need to do. If you have all the properties exactly measured, see, the DM only needs how the two particles interact. If you are able to give those properties to DM properly, it does not need validation. But if you don't know those properties, then we need to validate and find out those properties. For example, the rolling friction or the restitution values or the frictional values between two. So those values, if you exactly know, then DM will be able to give you proper results. Otherwise, we need to validate the results or calibrate the results in another sense.
There is another participant who wants to ask question. I think Sharath Chandra, you can go ahead. Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe we'll take this as the last question. Yeah.
Sharath Chandra, we are not able to hear you. You can type in your question if you. All right.